maybe not as directly. Any impacts that a change in the start date might have for students who are seniors, either going to college or going to a trade school, and sort of typical application windows for that sort of a thing? Is there anything that might give somebody an edge one way or the other, or at least just a factor to consider?
Thank you. We can certainly find out if there's any implications, and we can reach out to a couple of admissions officers around Virginia. Because more than 50% of the state already goes before Labor Day, I would anticipate that they would say there's no impact one way or the other. But we certainly can ask to make sure. All right, so should I go ahead?
Yeah.
Lawrence looks like he's ready to ask
Do you
a
have a
question.
question? Okay.
He's like, he wants to see the baseball game.
Which they are up 7-0 right now in the second inning.
Thank you, Mr. Webb, for that update.
All right. With that great news, let me share the engagement plan. So the engagement plan is this, and we are slowly sort of ticking these off. So our first ad hoc committee meeting will be tomorrow at 4 o'clock here in central office. And again, that is a broad representation of parents, SAOs, staff from the schools, PEAK, SEEK, EEK representatives, school administrators, and members of central office. I think the total number is 27 member committee. So it'll be interesting to get all of them together. And Mr. Bates is going to kind of run through this presentation with them tomorrow. Our first community outreach meeting is the next night. And I've been working with Mary Beth Connolly and Matt Hills and Marty Goodell, who are going to help sort of me facilitate that, along with members of the ad hoc committee who will be there. But that evening, we'll run through the same presentation, and we're going to ask the community writ large, are there other drivers that we need to consider? And are there other questions that you may have? And so they'll be able to jot those questions down, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can that night. But I really want to represent you and the ad hoc committee well that evening, just to say that there's no decision that's been made, and that the outcome of the ad hoc committee will be probably 4 different options of calendars, 2 post-Labor Day and 2 pre-Labor Day. And at the end, hopefully we'll get some good feedback from the survey that we're going to receive. The ad hoc committee number 2 is the 23rd, and then the November 6th is the 3rd ad hoc committee meeting. Then there'll be public comment available for anyone who wants to come to the regular school board meeting on November 12th and give public comment as part of our due course in our meetings. There's another community outreach on November 14th, and that will be an evening where we can just kind of talk through the 4 calendar options that are being proposed. That will be a night where that ad hoc committee will have completed their work. So, somebody's going to come in, I would imagine, and say, well, what if you did this and what if you did that? And at that point, that ad hoc committee will have gone through all of the iterations and sort of made their judgments about what's possible and what isn't. So we'll be available to provide any input from the ad hoc committee meeting at that community outreach meeting on the 14th. And then at your request from the last meeting to try to give more time with the survey, we did move the survey window to November 15th, and that will run until the 29th. So almost, it is 2 full weeks. We decided to end it after the break, Thanksgiving break, because if you couldn't get to it until the Thanksgiving break, you still had the Thanksgiving break to finish it. We'll post the results of the survey in board docs on December 5th, and then public comment again on December 10th as part of our regular board meeting, and I'll present the results that evening to all of you and in public. And then on the 17th of December, you all will come forward with a vote on the calendar of choice. That's it. It's going to be we got a lot going on. But I do think that I do think it's good to hear different perspectives and hear from people about what their thoughts are, and I think engaging folks in the conversation is a good thing. One other thing that I didn't say, and it kind of goes to Mr. Castillo's point about, is the 15th sort of fungible in some ways or movable. just like that date is, the start date is as well, it can move. And I would submit to you that one thing that we would want to consider is not locking ourselves in to an absolute start date every year. And that ad hoc committee would then come back the next year and have a similar conversation about what are the drivers, let's put some schedules together and let's send them out in a survey. Because the following year, it might be a different start date. It sort of depends on when Labor Day is. If they did decide to go pre-Labor Day, they might start a week before one year, or 2 weeks before the next, or 4 days before. It's sort of, I think there's some flexibility in there. I guess all that to say that I wouldn't peg the start date to a particular day, which then does create some potential conflicts with, I want to schedule this beach house or whatever, and I don't know what the start date of school is, but the sooner we can get that information out, the better.
Just, you refresh my memory about one other question. You mentioned, for example, ending the semester right before, with winter break. Is a trimester kind of approach on the table? Are we locked into semesters? I could see that if you could have 3 discrete chunks, you could do some interesting and different things, but I don't even know whether that's worth entertaining.
I think given the timeline that we have and the task that we have at hand, to get a calendar together by December, I'd like to maybe table that for another time. But I don't know that it's off the table forever, but I don't know that we can get that done. But it's a good question.
That's a good answer.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Noonan, with this up there and your last comments, I just want to make sure I'm tracking properly, right? So we've had a committee looking at the calendar for a long time. It's just that this year is the first year that the state has given us the flexibility to start at a time earlier than Labor Day. And so this year we've got a committee now that is expanding to include much more community input. And for later years, because we still have that flexibility until the law changes in some other way, you're envisioning continuing that sort of engagement on an ongoing basis. So really, it's sort of like taking what has been the practice and then expanding it to take advantage of this additional flexibility if we want to go one way or the other. Is that a fair statement, or am I not tracking properly?
No, I think that's a fair statement. I think the question will be, would we do a full community survey every year? I don't know that we would necessarily do that, but perhaps we could expand the ad hoc committee to have more community input since that day is flexible, that start day is flexible.
Great, well, thank you very much. It looks very comprehensive, and
Yeah,
I'm excited to
too
hear from the community at many different opportunities, and I hope that everyone who's watching tonight will please take advantage of those opportunities for public comment, because we do want to hear from you. Next up is 6.02, our superintendent's proposed goals.
Okay, thank you. Wondering, John, if we might be able to get those on the screen. This year, and sort of let me sort of give you my approach this year to the division-wide goals. Really was to try to make the goals, one, align to the things that we've been talking about, right? So IB, caring culture, and gap closing, along with some of those additional pieces that are, enablers, if you will, that are the operations. But make the goals big enough and sort of broad enough that we would provide enough opportunity for each of our schools to be able to develop action plans to achieve those goals. So this evening, what I'd like to share with you is a draft, and I'm happy to take feedback tonight, or if you want to take them home and digest them a little bit and think about them, I'm certainly open to that as well. But let me start with the IB program. And I have to tell you, as I thought about the IB program and Caring Climate, those two are a little bit more difficult to develop a SMART goal, or a strategic, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and time-bound goal for, but not impossible, right? And so what I've tried to do here is tried to capture as much as I could around this goal and then put a couple of action steps in as illustrative more than anything. So the first is that FCCPS teachers, staff, students, and community will have a better understanding of and be able to communicate the differences between a traditional instructional program and FCCPS's pre-K-12 International Baccalaureate Continuum by August 2020. As I indicated, I think in our last school board meeting, one of the things that I think we can do a better job of as a system is really distinguishing ourselves as an IB division. That there still seems to be some questions about why IB. And as we engage in the work of IB, if you don't know why IB, it makes it more complicated and difficult to get to. So I'd like to spend some time this year really working on developing those distinguishing characteristics and qualities. So some of the action steps, and the first action step under each of these are going to be the same. So the first action step is that each school will collaboratively develop and implement a school action plan aligned to the division goal, IB program, not diploma program, IB program. Which means that in the not too distant future, I'm going to come back to all of you with the principals, and they're going to be able to share what their school plans are that are going to be directly aligned to these goals that are in these division goals. And you'll see sort of how they feed that idea of working towards better understanding and communicating around the IB program. Another action step is to define and professionally develop around those best practices that are associated with the IB program that are considered value add and make our program more robust and aligned to the core values of our community. So the pieces of the IB program that I think we need to spend more time, or not more time, we need to continue training around are the approaches to learning, the approaches to teaching, and the learner profile. Those are also pieces, frankly, that I think we need to do a better job of communicating to our broader community as well, because it is, as I indicated at our last meeting, those approaches to learning that really make the difference in an instructional program for a kid. And then the last is looking at multiple avenues of communication strategies be deployed to support the community's understanding of our IB program as evidenced by a communication structure and plan. And so Mr. Brett and his partner in crime, Mary Beth Connolly, have been working together to put together a communication plan, looking at how we use Facebook, Twitter, morning announcement, video series, websites, parent university, and the like to really carry our message around the IB program. So that's the first of the three big goals. The second is specific to a caring climate and culture. And the big goal there is that we will target equity and social and emotional learning in school community, our school community, by implementing research and evidence-based strategies and practices. So our action steps there are that each school will collaboratively develop and implement a school action plan aligned to the division goal of climate and culture. But we're also going to, as part of this, accept, review, and engage with the outcomes and action steps that are derived from the plan that Dr. Julian Williams is going to provide to us from George Mason University to ensure that, and this is the language of equity that we are picking up and really trying to socialize, persistently, unapologetically, and consistently provide more time, attention, support, effort, resources, advocacy, and energy to those groups who have historically been marginalized to ensure that every student receives exactly what they need to be successful. And for us, that's really, I think, the definition of equity. Equity is not equal. It's about providing the resources to meet kids where they are to ensure that every student gets what they need. And then the last action step around that caring community as sort of an illustrative action step is that we'll identify a provider for and begin the development of a culture and climate benchmark survey for use in the 2021 school year. And there are a number of groups out there that can help us pull something together. It would be a budget item for the 2021 school year that we'd like to talk about as part of the budget process, but I think it's time that we do something that speaks to, do we have a caring community and climate? What does that look like? How do we treat each other with fairness and equity and the like? The third goal is around gap closing, and this is one where you'll notice that we did put two X's next to the percentage. So the goal would be by August of 2020, FCCPS will reduce achievement gaps in reading and mathematics by